The Secret Teachings of All Ages by ManlyPHall. Part 22, The Fraternity of the Rose Cross. Enjoy the listening. Who were the Rosicrucians? Were they an organization of profound thinkers rebelling against the inquisitional religious and philosophical limitations of their time, or were they isolated transcendentalists united only by the similarity of their viewpoints and deductions? Where was the house of the Holy Spirit, in which, according to their manifestos, they met once a year to plan the future activities of their order? Who was the mysterious person referred to as our illustrious father and brother CRC? Did those three letters actually stand for the words Christian Rose Cross? Was Christian Rosencreutz, the supposed author of the Chimical Nuptials, the same person who with three others founded the Society of the Rose Cross? What relationship existed between Rosicrucianism and medieval Freemasonry? Why were the destinies of these two organizations so closely interwoven? Is the Brotherhood of the Rose Cross, the much sought-after link, connecting the Freemasonry of the Middle Ages with the symbolism and mysticism of antiquity? And are its secrets being perpetuated by modern Masonry? Did the original Rosicrucian order disintegrate in the latter part of the 18th century, or does the society still exist as an organization, maintaining the same secrecy for which it was originally famous? What was the true purpose for which the Brotherhood of the Rose Cross was formed? Were the Rosicrucians a religious and philosophically brotherhood, as they claimed to be, or were their avowed tenets a blind to conceal the true object of the fraternity, which possibly was the political control of Europe? These are some of the problems involved in the study of Rosicrucianism. There are 4 distinct theories regarding the Rosicrucian enigma. Each is the result of a careful consideration of the evidence by scholars who have spent their lives ransacking the archives of Hermetic lore. The conclusions reached demonstrate clearly the inadequacy of the records available concerning the genesis and early activities of the Brethren of the Rose Cross. It is assumed that the Rosicrucian order existed historically in accordance with the description of its foundation and subsequent activities published in its manifesto. The Fama Fraternitatis, which is believed to have been written in the year 1610, but apparently did not appear in print until 1614, although an earlier edition is suspected by some authorities. Intelligent consideration of the origin of Rosicrucianism requires a familiarity with the contents of the first and most important of its documents. The Fama Fraternitatis begins with a reminder to all the world of God's goodness and mercy, and it warns the intelligentsia that their egotism and covetousness cause them to follow after false prophets and to ignore the true knowledge which God in His goodness has revealed to them. Hence, a reformation is necessary, and God has raised up philosophers and sages for this purpose. In order to assist in bringing about the Reformation, a mysterious person called the highly illuminated Father CRC, a German by birth, descended of a noble family, but himself a poor man, instituted the secret society of the Rose Cross. CRC was placed in a cloister when only 5 years of age, but later becoming dissatisfied with its educational system, he associated himself with a brother of holy orders who was setting forth on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. They started out together, but the brother died at Cyprus, and CRC continued alone to Damascus. Poor health prevented him from reaching Jerusalem, so he remained at Damascus, studying with the philosophers who dwelt there. While pursuing his studies, he heard of a group of mystics and Qabbalists abiding in the mysterious Arabian city of Damcar. Giving up his desire to visit Jerusalem, he arranged with the Arabians for his transportation to Damcar. CRC was but 16 years of age when he arrived at Damcar. He was received as one who had been long expected, a comrade and a friend in philosophy, and was instructed in the secrets of the Arabian adepts. While there, CRC learned the Arabic tongue and translated the sacred book M into Latin, and upon returning to Europe, he brought this important volume with him. After studying 3 years in Damcar, CRC departed for the city of Fez, where the Arabian magicians declared further information would be given him. At Fez, he was instructed how to communicate with the elementary inhabitants, probably the nature spirits, and these disclosed to him many other great secrets of nature. While the philosophers in Fez were not so great as those in Damcar, the previous experiences of CRC enabled him to distinguish the true from the false and thus add greatly to his store of knowledge. After 2 years in Fez, CRC sailed for Spain, carrying with him many treasures, among them rare plants and animals accumulated during his wanderings. He fondly hoped that the learned men of Europe would receive with gratitude the rare intellectual and material treasures which he had brought for their consideration. Instead, he encountered only ridicule, for the so-called wise were afraid to admit their previous ignorance lest their prestige be impaired. At this point in the narrative is an interpolation stating that Paracelsus, while not a member of the Fraternity of the Rose Cross, had read the book M, and from a consideration of its contents had secured information which made him the foremost physician of medieval Europe. Tired, but not discouraged, as the result of the fruitlessness of his efforts, CRC returned to Germany, where he built a house in which he could quietly carry on his study and research. He also manufactured a number of rare scientific instruments for research purposes. While he could have made himself famous had he cared to commercialize his knowledge, he preferred the companionship of God to the esteem of men. After 5 years of retirement, he decided to renew his struggle for a reformation of the arts and sciences of his day, this time with the aid of a few trusted friends. He sent to the cloister, where his early training had been received, and called to himself 3 brethren, whom he bound by an oath to preserve inviolate the secrets he should impart, and to write down for the sake of posterity the information he should dictate. These 4 founded the Fraternity of the Rose Cross. They prepared its secret cipher language, and according to the Fama, a great dictionary in which all forms of wisdom were classified to the glorification of God. They also began the work of transcribing the Book M, but found the task too difficult because of the demands of the great numbers of sick who came to them for healing. Having completed a newer and larger building, which they called the House of the Holy Spirit, they decided to include 4 new members in the fraternity, thus increasing the number to 8, 7 of whom were German. All were unmarried. Working industriously together, they speedily completed the arduous labor of preparing the documents, instructions, and arcana of the order. They also put the house called Sancti Spiritus in order. They then decided to separate and visit the other countries of the earth, not only that their wisdom might be given to others who deserved it, but also that they might check and correct any mistakes existing in their own system. Before separating, the brethren prepared 6 rules or bylaws, and each bound himself to obey them. The first rule was that they should take to themselves no other dignity or credit than that they were willing to heal the sick without charge. The second was that from that time on forever they should wear no special robe or garment, but should dress according to the custom of the country wherein they dwelt. The third stated that every year upon a certain day they should meet in the house of the Holy Spirit, or, if unable to do so, should be represented by an epistle. The fourth decreed that each member should search for a worthy person to succeed him at his own demise. The fifth stated that the letters RC should be their seal, mark, and character from that time onward. The sixth specified that the fraternity should remain unknown to the world for a period of 100 years. After they had sworn to this code, 5 of the brothers departed to distant lands, and a year later 2 of the others also went their way, leaving Father CRC alone in the house of the Holy Spirit. Year after year, they met with great joy, for they had quietly and sincerely promulgated their doctrines among the wise of the earth. When the first of the order died in England, it was decided that the burial places of the members should be secret. Soon afterward, Father CRC called the remaining 6 together, and it is supposed that then he prepared his own symbolic tomb. The Fama records that none of the brothers alive at the time of its writing knew when Father CRC died or where he was buried. His body was accidentally discovered 120 years after his death, when one of the brothers, who possessed considerable architectural skill, decided to make some alterations in the house of the Holy Spirit. It is only suspected that the tomb was in this building. While making his alterations, the brother discovered a memorial tablet upon which were inscribed the names of the early members of the order. This he decided to transfer to a more imposing chapel, for at that time no one knew in what country Father CRC had died, this information having been concealed by the original members. In attempting to remove the memorial tablet, which was held in place by a large nail, some stones and plastering were broken from the wall, disclosing a door concealed in the masonry. The members of the order immediately cleared away the rest of the debris and uncovered the entrance to a vault. Upon the door in large letters were the words, Post CXX ANNOSPATBO. This, according to the mystic interpretation of the Brethren, meant, "In 120 years I shall come forth." The following morning the door was opened, and the members entered a vault with 7 sides and 7 corners, each side 5 feet broad and 8 feet high. Although the sun never penetrated this tomb, it was brilliantly illuminated by a mysterious light in the ceiling. In the center was a circular altar, upon which were brass plates engraved with strange characters. In each of the 7 sides was a small door which, upon being opened, revealed a number of boxes filled with books, secret instructions, and the supposedly lost arcanum of the fraternity. Upon moving the altar to one side, a brass cover was disclosed. Lifting this revealed a body, presumably that of CRC, which, although it had lain there 120 years, was as well preserved as though it had just been interred. It was ornamented and attired in the robes of the order, and in one hand was clasped a mysterious parchment which, next to the Bible, was the most valued possession of the society. After thoroughly investigating the contents of the secret chamber, the brass plate and altar were put back in place. The door of the vault was again sealed, and the brothers went their respective ways, their spirits raised and their faith increased by the miraculous spectacle which they had beheld. The document ends by saying in effect, "In accordance with the will of Father CRC, the Fama has been prepared and sent forth to the wise and learned of all Europe in 5 languages, that all may know and understand the secrets of the august fraternity. All of sincere soul who labor for the glory of God are invited to communicate with the brethren and are promised that their appeal shall be heard, regardless of where they are or how the messages are sent. At the same time, those of selfish and ulterior motives are warned that only sorrow and misery will attend any who attempt to discover the fraternity without a clean heart and a pure mind." Such, in brief, is the story of the Fama Fraternitatis. Those who accept it literally regard Father CRC as the actual founder of the Brotherhood, which he is believed to have organized about 1400. The fact that historical corroboration of the important points of the Fama has never been discovered is held against this theory. There is no proof that Father CRC ever approached the learned men of Spain. The mysterious city of Damcar cannot be found, and there is no record that anywhere in Germany there existed a place where great numbers of the halt and sick came and were mysteriously healed. A.E. Waite's The Secret Tradition in Freemasonry contains a picture of Father CRC showing him with a long beard upon his breast, sitting before a table upon which burns a candle. One hand is supporting his head, and the other is resting the tip of its index finger on the temple of a human skull. The picture, however, proves nothing. Father CRC was never seen by other than members of his own order, and they did not preserve a description of him. That his name was Christian Rosencreutz is most improbable, as the two were not even associated until the writing of the chimical nuptials. Trustworthy information is unavailable concerning the actual philosophical beliefs, political aspirations, and humanitarian activities of the Rosicrucian fraternity. Today, as of old, the mysteries of the society are preserved inviolate by virtue of their essential nature, and attempts to interpret Rosicrucian philosophy are but speculations, anything to the contrary notwithstanding. Evidence points to the probable existence of 2 distinct Rosicrucian bodies, an inner organization whose members never revealed their identity or teachings to the world, and an outer body under the supervision of the inner group. In all probability, the symbolic tomb of Christian Rosencreutz, Knight of the Golden Stone, was in reality this outer body, the spirit of which is in a more exalted sphere. For a period of more than a century subsequent to 1614, the outer body circulated tracts and manifestos under either its own name or the names of various initiated members. The purpose of these writings was apparently to confuse and mislead investigators, and thus effectively to conceal the actual designs of the fraternity. When Rosicrucianism became the philosophical fad of the 17th century, numerous documents on the subject were also circulated for purely commercial purposes by impostors desirous of capitalizing its popularity. The cunningly contrived artifices of the fraternity itself and the blundering literary impostures of charlatans formed a double veil behind which the inner organization carried on its activities in a manner totally dissimilar to its purposes and principles as publicly disseminated. The Fraters Rosicrucis naively refer to the misunderstandings, which they have for obvious reasons permitted to exist concerning themselves, as being clouds within which they labor and behind which they are concealed. An inkling of the substance of Rosicrucianism, its esoteric doctrines, can be gleaned from an analysis of its shadow, its exoteric writings. In one of the most important of their clouds, the Confessio Fraternitatis, the Brethren of the Fraternity of RC seek to justify their existence and explain the purposes and activities of their order. In its original form, the Confessio is divided into 14 chapters, which are here epitomized. Chapter I do not through hasty judgment or prejudice misinterpret the statements concerning our fraternity published in our previous manifesto, the Fama Fraternitatis. Jehovah, beholding the decadence of civilization, seeks to redeem humanity by revealing to the willing and by thrusting upon the reluctant those secrets which previously he had reserved for his elect. By this wisdom the godly shall be saved, but the sorrows of the ungodly shall be multiplied. While the true purpose of our order was set forth in the Fama Fraternitatis, misunderstandings have arisen through which we have been falsely accused of heresy and treason. In this document, we hope so to clarify our position that the learned of Europe will be moved to join with us in the dissemination of divine knowledge according to the will of our illustrious founder. Chapter II. While it is alleged by many that the philosophically code of our day is sound, we declare it to be false and soon to die of its own inherent weakness. Just as nature, however, provides a remedy for each new disease that manifests itself, so our fraternity has provided a remedy for the infirmities of the world's philosophically system. The secret philosophy of the RC is founded upon that knowledge which is the sum and head of all faculties, sciences, and arts. By our divinely revealed system, which partakes much of theology and medicine but little of jurisprudence, we analyze the heavens and the earth. But mostly we study man himself, within whose nature is concealed the supreme secret. If the learned of our day will accept our invitation and join themselves to our fraternity, we will reveal to them undreamed of secrets and wonders concerning the hidden workings of nature. Chapter III. Do not believe that the secrets discussed in this brief document are lightly esteemed by us. We cannot describe fully the marvels of our fraternity, lest the uninformed be overwhelmed by our astonishing declarations, and the vulgar ridicule the mysteries which they do not comprehend. We also fear that many will be confused by the unexpected generosity of our proclamation, for not understanding the wonders of this sixth age, they do not realize the great changes which are to come. Like blind men living in a world full of light, they discern only through the sense of feeling. By sight is implied spiritual cognition, by feeling, the material senses. Chapter IV. We firmly believe that through deep meditation on the inventions of the human mind and the mysteries of life, through the cooperation of the angels and spirits, and through experience and long observation, our loving Christian Father CRC was so fully illumined with God's wisdom that were all the books and writings of the world lost, and the foundations of science overturned, the fraternity of RC could reestablish the structure of world thought upon the foundation of divine truth and integrity. Because of the great depth and perfection of our knowledge, those desiring to understand the mysteries of the fraternity of RC cannot attain to that wisdom immediately, but must grow in understanding and knowledge. Therefore, our fraternity is divided into grades through which each must ascend step by step to the great arcanum. Now that it has pleased God to lighten unto us his sixth candelabrum, is it not better to seek truth in this way than to wander through the labyrinths of worldly ignorance? Furthermore, those who receive this knowledge shall become masters of all arts and crafts. No secret shall be hidden from them, and all good works of the past, present, and future shall be accessible to them. The whole world shall become as one book, and the contradictions of science and theology shall be reconciled. Rejoice, O humanity! For the time has come when God has decreed that the number of our fraternity shall be increased, a labor that we have joyously undertaken. The doors of wisdom are now open to the world, but only to those who have earned the privilege may the brothers present themselves, for it is forbidden to reveal our knowledge even to our own children. The right to receive spiritual truth cannot be inherited. It must be evolved within the soul of man himself. Chapter V, though we may be accused of indiscretion in offering our treasures so freely and promiscuously, without discriminating between the godly, the wise, the prince, the peasant, we affirm that we have not betrayed our trust. For although we have published our fama in 5 languages, only those understand it who have that right. Our society is not to be discovered by curiosity seekers, but only by serious and consecrated thinkers. Nevertheless, we have circulated our fama in 5 mother tongues, so that the righteous of all nations may have an opportunity to know of us, even though they be not scholars. 1,000 times the unworthy may present themselves and clamor at the gates, but God has forbidden us of the fraternity of RC to hear their voices, and He has surrounded us with His clouds and His protection so that no harm may come to us. And God has decreed that we of the order of RC can no longer be seen by mortal eyes unless they have received strength borrowed from the eagle. We further affirm that we shall reform the governments of Europe and pattern them according to the system applied by the philosophers of Damkar. All men desirous of securing knowledge shall receive as much as they are capable of understanding. The rule of false theology shall be overthrown, and God shall make His will known through His chosen philosophers. Chapter VII. Because of the need of brevity, it is enough to say that our father CRC was born in the year 1378 and departed at the age of 106, leaving to us the labor of spreading the doctrine of philosophically religion to the entire world. Our fraternity is open to all who sincerely seek for truth. But we publicly warn the false and impious that they cannot betray or injure us, for God has protected our fraternity, and all who seek to do it harm shall have their evil designs return and destroy them, while the treasures of our fraternity shall remain untouched, to be used by the lion in the establishment of his kingdom. Chapter VII. We declare that God, before the end of the world, shall create a great flood of spiritual light to alleviate the sufferings of humankind. Falsehood and darkness which have crept into the arts, sciences, religions, and governments of humanity, making it difficult for even the wise to discover the path of reality, shall be forever removed and a single standard established, so that all may enjoy the fruitage of truth. We shall not be recognized as those responsible for this change, for people shall say that it is the result of the progressiveness of the age. Great are the reforms about to take place. But we of the fraternity of RC do not arrogate to ourselves the glory for this divine reformation, since many there are, not members of our fraternity but honest, true, and wise men, who by their intelligence and their writings shall hasten its coming. We testify that sooner the stones shall rise up and offer their services than that there shall be any lack of righteous persons to execute the will of God upon earth. Chapter VIII. That no one may doubt, we declare that God has sent messengers and signs in the heavens, namely, the new stars in Serpentarius and Cygnus, to show that a great council of the elect is to take place. This proves that God reveals invisible nature, for the discerning few, signs and symbols of all things that are coming to pass. God has given man 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and 2 ears, but only 1 tongue. Whereas the eyes, the nostrils, and the ears admit the wisdom of nature into the mind, the tongue alone may give it forth. In various ages there have been illumined ones who have seen, smelt, tasted, or heard the will of God, but it will shortly come to pass that those who have seen, smelt, tasted, or heard shall speak, and truth shall be revealed. Before this revelation of righteousness is possible, however, the world must sleep away the intoxication of her poisoned chalice, filled with the false life of the theological vine, and, opening her heart to virtue and understanding, welcome the rising sun of truth. Chapter IX. We have a magic writing, copied from that divine alphabet with which God writes His will upon the face of celestial and terrestrial nature. With this new language, we read God's will for all His creatures, and just as astronomers predict eclipses, so we prognosticate the obscurations of the church and how long they shall last. Our language is like unto that of Adam and Enoch before the fall, and though we understand and can explain our mysteries in this our sacred language, we cannot do so in Latin, a tongue contaminated by the confusion of Babylon. Chapter X. Although there are still certain powerful persons who oppose and hinder us, because of which we must remain concealed, we exhort those who would become of our fraternity to study unceasingly the sacred scriptures, for such as do this cannot be far from us. We do not mean that the Bible should be continually in the mouth of man, but that he should search for its true and eternal meaning, which is seldom discovered by theologians, scientists, or mathematicians, because they are blinded by the opinions of their sects. We bear witness that never since the beginning of the world has there been given to man a more excellent book than the Holy Bible. Blessed is he who possesses it, more blessed he who reads it, most blessed he who understands it, and most godlike he who obeys it. Chapter XI. We wish the statements we made in the Fama Fraternitatis concerning the transmutation of metals and the universal medicine to be lightly understood. While we realize that both these works are attainable by man, we fear that many really great minds may be led away from the true quest of knowledge and understanding if they permit themselves to limit their investigation to the transmutation of metals. When to a man is given power to heal disease, to overcome poverty, and to reach a position of worldly dignity, that man is beset by numerous temptations, and unless he possess true knowledge and full understanding, he will become a terrible menace to mankind. The alchemist who attains to the art of transmuting base metals can do all manner of evil unless his understanding be as great as his self-created wealth. We therefore affirm that man must first gain knowledge, virtue, and understanding. Then all other things may be added unto him. We accuse the Christian Church of the great sin of possessing power and using it unwisely. Therefore we prophesy that it shall fall by the weight of its own iniquities, and its crown shall be brought to naught. Chapter XII. In concluding our Confessio, we earnestly admonish you to cast aside the worthless books of pseudo-alchemists and philosophers, of whom there are many in our age, who make light of the Holy Trinity and deceive the credulous with meaningless enigmas. One of the greatest of these is a stage player, a man with sufficient ingenuity for imposition. Such men are mingled by the enemy of human welfare among those who seek to do good, thus making truth more difficult of discovery. Believe us, truth is simple and unconcealed, while falsehood is complex, deeply hidden, proud, and its fictitious worldly knowledge, seemingly a glitter with godly luster, is often mistaken for divine wisdom. You that are wise will turn from these false teachings and come to us, who seek not your money but freely offer you our greater treasure. We desire not your goods, but that you should become partakers of our goods. We do not deride parables, but invite you to understand all parables and all secrets. We do not ask you to receive us, but invite you to come unto our kingly houses and palaces, not because of ourselves, but because we are so ordered by the Spirit of God, the desire of our most excellent Father CRC, and the need of the present moment, which is very great. Chapter XIII. Now that we have made our position clear that we sincerely confess Christ, disavow the papacy, devote our lives to true philosophy and worthy living, and daily invite and admit into our fraternity the worthy of all nations, who thereafter share with us the light of God. Will you not join yourselves with us to the perfection of yourselves, the development of all the arts, and the service of the world? If you will take this step, the treasures of every part of the earth shall be at one time given unto you, and the darkness which envelopes human knowledge, and which results in the vanities of material arts and sciences, shall be forever dispelled. Chapter XIV. Again, we warn those who are dazzled by the glitter of gold, or those who, now upright, might be turned by great riches to a life of idleness and pomp, not to disturb our sacred silence with their clamorings. For though there be a medicine which will cure all diseases and give unto all men wisdom, yet it is against the will of God that men should attain to understanding by any means other than virtue, labor, and integrity. We are not permitted to manifest ourselves to any man, except it be by the will of God. Those who believe that they can partake of our spiritual wealth against the will of God, or without his sanction, will find that they shall sooner lose their lives in seeking us than attain happiness by finding us. The present consideration of the Bacon, SHAKSPERE, Rosicrucian controversy is undertaken not for the vain purpose of digging up dead men's bones, but rather in the hope that a critical analysis will aid in the rediscovery of that knowledge lost to the world since the oracles were silenced. It was W.F.C. Wigston who called the bard of Avon, Phantom Captain Shakespeare, the Rosicrucian mask. This constitutes one of the most significant statements relating to the Bacon-SHAKSPERE controversy. It is quite evident that William Shakespeare could not, unaided, have produced the immortal writings bearing his name. He did not possess the necessary literary culture, for the town of Stratford, where he was reared, contained no school capable of imparting the higher forms of learning reflected in the writings ascribed to him. His parents were illiterate, and in his early life he evinced a total disregard for study. There are in existence but 6 known examples of Shakespeare's handwriting. All are signatures, and 3 of them are in his will. The scrawling, uncertain method of their execution stamps SHAKSPERE as unfamiliar with the use of a pen, and it is obvious either that he copied a signature prepared for him or that his hand was guided while he wrote. No autograph manuscripts of the Shakespearean plays or sonnets have been discovered, nor is there even a tradition concerning them other than the fantastic and impossible statement appearing in the foreword of the Great Folio. A well-stocked library would be an essential part of the equipment of an author whose literary productions demonstrate him to be familiar with the literature of all ages. Yet there is no record that SHAKSPERE ever possessed a library, nor does he make any mention of books in his will. Commenting on the known illiteracy of SHAKSPERE's daughter Judith, who at 27 could only make her mark, Ignatius Donnelly declares it to be unbelievable that William Shakespeare, if he wrote the plays bearing his name, would have permitted his own daughter to reach womanhood and marry without being able to read one line of the writings that made her father wealthy and locally famous. The query also has been raised: where did William Shakespeare secure his knowledge of modern French, Italian, Spanish, and Danish, to say nothing of classical Latin and Greek? For, in spite of the rare discrimination with which Latin is used by the author of the Shakespearean plays, Ben Jonson, who knew Shakespeare intimately, declared that the Stratford actor understood small Latin and less Greek. Is it not also more than strange that no record exists of William Shakespeare's having ever played a leading role in the famous dramas he is supposed to have written or in others produced by the company of which he was a member? True, he may have owned a small interest in the Globe Theatre or Blackfriars, but apparently the height of his thespian achievements was the ghost in Hamlet. In spite of his admitted avarice, Shakespeare seemingly made no effort during his lifetime to control or secure remuneration from the plays bearing his name, many of which were first published anonymously. As far as can be ascertained, none of his heirs were involved in any manner whatsoever in the printing of the first folio after his death, nor did they benefit financially therefrom. Had he been their author, Shakespeare's manuscripts and unpublished plays would certainly have constituted his most valued possessions, yet his will, while making special disposition of his second-best bed and his broad silver gilt bowl, neither mentions nor intimates that he possessed any literary productions whatsoever. While the folios and quartos usually are signed William Shakespeare, all the known autographs of the Stratford actor read William Shakespeare. Does this change in spelling contain any significance heretofore generally overlooked? Furthermore, if the publishers of the first Shakespearean folio revered their fellow actor as much as their claims in that volume would indicate, why did they, as if in ironical allusion to a hoax which they were perpetrating, place an evident caricature of him on the title page? Certain absurdities also in Shakespeare's private life are irreconcilable. While supposedly at the zenith of his literary career, he was actually engaged in buying malt, presumably for a brewing business. Also picture the immortal Shakespeare, the reputed author of The Merchant of Venice, as a moneylender. Yet among those against whom Shakespeare brought action to collect petty sums was a fellow townsman, one Philip Rogers, whom he sued for an unpaid loan of 2 shillings, or about 48 cents. In short, there is nothing known in the life of Shakespeare that would justify the literary excellence imputed to him. The philosophical ideals promulgated throughout the Shakespearean plays distinctly demonstrate their author to have been thoroughly familiar with certain doctrines and tenets peculiar to Rosicrucianism. In fact, the profundity of the Shakespearean productions stamps their creator as one of the Illuminati of the ages. Most of those seeking a solution for the Bacon-Shakespeare controversy have been intellectualists. Notwithstanding their scholarly attainments, they have overlooked the important part played by transcendentalism in the philosophical achievements of the ages. The mysteries of superphysics are inexplicable to the materialist, whose training does not equip him to estimate the extent of their ramifications and complexities. Yet who but a Platonist, a Qabbalist, or a Pythagorean could have written The Tempest, Macbeth, Hamlet, or the Tragedy of Cymbeline? Who but one deeply versed in Paracelsian lore could have conceived A Midsummer Night's Dream? Father of modern science, remodeler of modern law, editor of the modern Bible, patron of modern democracy, and one of the founders of modern Freemasonry, Sir Francis Bacon was a man of many aims and purposes. He was a Rosicrucian. Some have intimated the Rosicrucian. If not actually the illustrious Father CRC referred to in the Rosicrucian manifestos, he was certainly a high initiate of the Rosicrucian order, and it is his activities in connection with this secret body that are of prime importance to students of symbolism, philosophy, and literature. Scores of volumes have been written to establish Sir Francis Bacon as the real author of the plays and sonnets popularly ascribed to William Shakespeare. An impartial consideration of these documents cannot but convince the open-minded of the verisimilitude of the Baconian theory. In fact, those enthusiasts who for years have struggled to identify Sir Francis Bacon as the true Bard of Avon might long since have won their case had they emphasized its most important angle, namely, that Sir Francis Bacon, the Rosicrucian initiate, wrote into the Shakespearean plays the secret teachings of the Fraternity of RC and the true rituals of the Freemasonic order, of which order it may yet be discovered that he was the actual founder. A sentimental world, however, dislikes to give up a traditional hero, either to solve a controversy or to right a wrong. Nevertheless, if it can be proved that by raveling out the riddle there can be discovered information of practical value to mankind, then the best minds of the world will cooperate in the enterprise. The Bacon-Shakespeare controversy, as its most able advocates realize, involves the most profound aspects of science, religion, and ethics. He who solves its mystery may yet find therein the key to the supposedly lost wisdom of antiquity. It was in recognition of Bacon's intellectual accomplishments that King James turned over to him the translator's manuscripts of what is now known as the King James Bible for the presumable purpose of checking, editing, and revising them. The documents remained in his hands for nearly a year, but no information is to be had concerning what occurred in that time. Regarding this work, William T. Smedley writes, "It will eventually be proved that the whole scheme of the authorized version of the Bible was Francis Bacon's. The first edition of the King James Bible contains a cryptic Baconian headpiece. Did Bacon cryptographically conceal in the authorized Bible that which he dared not literally reveal in the text, the secret Rosicrucian key to mystic and Masonic Christianity? Sir Francis Bacon unquestionably possessed the range of general and philosophical knowledge necessary to write the Shakespearean plays and sonnets, for it is usually conceded that he was a composer, lawyer, and linguist. His chaplain, Dr. William Raleigh, and Ben Jonson both attest his philosophically and poetic accomplishments. The former pays Bacon this remarkable tribute. I have been induced to think that if there were a beam of knowledge derived from God upon any man in these modern times, it was upon him, for though he was a great reader of books, yet he had not his knowledge from books but from some grounds and notions from within himself. Sir Francis Bacon, being not only an able barrister, but also a polished courtier, also possessed that intimate knowledge of parliamentary law and the etiquette of the royal court revealed in the Shakespearean plays, which could scarcely have been acquired by a man in the humble station of the Stratford actor. Lord Verulam, furthermore, visited many of the foreign countries forming the background for the plays, and was therefore in a position to create the authentic local atmosphere contained therein. But there is no record of William Shakespeare's ever having traveled outside of England. The magnificent library amassed by Sir Francis Bacon contained the very volumes necessary to supply the quotations and anecdotes incorporated into the Shakespearean plays. Many of the plays, in fact, were taken from plots in earlier writings of which there was no English translation at that time. Because of his scholastic acquirements, Lord Verulam could have read the original books. It is most unlikely that William Shakespeare could have done so. Abundant cryptographic proof exists that Bacon was concerned in the production of the Shakespearean plays. Sir Francis Bacon's cipher number was 33. In the first part of King Henry IV, the word Francis appears 33 times upon one page. To attain this end, obviously awkward sentences were required as, "Anon Francis, no Francis but tomorrow Francis," or "Francis on Thursday," or "Indeed Francis when thou wilt, but Francis." Throughout the Shakespearean folios and quartos occur scores of acrostic signatures. The simplest form of the acrostic is that whereby a name, in these instances Bacon's, was hidden in the first few letters of lines. In The Tempest, Act I, Scene 2, appears a striking example of the Baconian acrostic. The first letters of the first and second lines together with the first three letters of the third line form the word Bacon. Similar acrostics appear frequently in Bacon's acknowledged writings. The tenor of the Shakespearean dramas politically is in harmony with the recognized viewpoints of Sir Francis Bacon, whose enemies are frequently caricatured in the plays. Likewise, their religious, philosophically, and educational undercurrents all reflect his personal opinions. Not only do these marked similarities of style and terminology exist in Bacon's writings and the Shakespearean plays, but there are also certain historical and philosophical inaccuracies common to both, such as identical misquotations from Aristotle. Evidently realizing that futurity would unveil his full genius, Lord Verulam in his will bequeathed his soul to God above by the oblations of his Savior, his body to be buried obscurely, his name and memory to men's charitable speeches, to foreign nations, to succeeding ages, and to his own countrymen after some time had elapsed. That portion appearing in italics Bacon deleted from his will, apparently fearing that he had said too much. That Sir Francis Bacon's subterfuge was known to a limited few during his lifetime is quite evident. Accordingly, stray hints regarding the true author of the Shakespearean plays may be found in many 17th-century volumes. On page 33, Bacon's cipher number, of the 1609 edition of Robert Cowdrey's Treasury or Storehouse of Similes, appears the following significant allusion. Like as men would laugh at a poor man, if having precious garments lent him to act and play the part of some honorable personage upon a stage, when the play were at an end he should keep them as his own, and brag up and down in them. Repeated references to the word hog, and the presence of cryptographic statements on page 33 of various contemporary writings, demonstrate that the keys to Bacon's ciphers were his own name, words playing upon it, or its numerical equivalent. Notable examples are the famous statement of Mistress Quickly in the Merry Wives of Windsor. Hang hog is Latin for bacon, I warrant you. The title pages of the Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia and Edmund Spenser's Faerie Queen. And the emblems appearing in the works of Alciatus and Wither. Furthermore, the word honorificabilitudinitatibus appearing in the 5th act of Love's Labours Lost is a Rosicrucian signature, as its numerical equivalent, 287, indicates. Again, on the title page of the first edition of Sir Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, Father Time is depicted bringing a female figure out of the darkness of a cave. Around the device is a Latin inscription. In time the secret truth shall be revealed. The catchwords and printers' devices appearing in volumes published especially during the first half of the 17th century were designed, arranged, and in some cases mutilated according to a definite plan. It is evident also that the mispaginations in the Shakespearean folios and other volumes are keys to Baconian ciphers, for reeditions, often from new type and by different printers, contain the same mistakes. For example, the first and second folios of Shakespeare are printed from entirely different type and by different printers 9 years apart. But in both editions, page 153 of the comedies is numbered 151, and pages 249 and 250 are numbered 250 and 251, respectively. Also in the 1640 edition of Bacon's, The Advancement and Proficience of Learning, pages 353 and 354 are numbered 351 and 352, respectively. And in the 1641 edition of Du Barta's Divine Weeks pages 346 to 350, inclusive are entirely missing, while page 450 is numbered 442. The frequency with which pages ending in numbers 50, 51, 52, 53, and 54 are involved will be noted. The requirements of Lord Verulam's biliteral cipher are fully met in scores of volumes printed between 1590 and 1650, and in some printed at other times. An examination of the verses by L. Digges, dedicated to the memory of the deceased author Maester W. Shakespeare, reveals the use of 2 fonts of type for both capital and small letters, the differences being most marked in the capital T's, N's, and A's. The cipher has been deleted from subsequent editions. The presence of hidden material in the text is often indicated by needless involvement of words. On the 16th unnumbered page of the 1641 edition of Du Barta's Divine Weeks is a boar surmounting a pyramidal text. The text is meaningless jargon, evidently inserted for cryptographic reasons and marked with Bacon's signature, the hog. The year following publication of the first folio of Shakespeare's plays in 1623, there was printed in Lüneburg a remarkable volume on cryptography, avowedly by Gustavus Cellinus. It is considered extremely probable that this volume constitutes the cryptographic key to the great Shakespearean folio. Peculiar symbolical head and tail pieces also mark the presence of cryptograms. While such ornaments are found in many early printed books, certain emblems are peculiar to volumes containing Baconian Rosicrucian ciphers. The light and dark shaded A is an interesting example. Bearing in mind the frequent recurrence in Baconian symbolism of the light and dark shaded A and the hog, the following statement by Bacon in his Interpretation of Nature is highly significant. If the sow with her snout should happen to imprint the letter A upon the ground, wouldst thou therefore imagine that she could write out a whole tragedy as one letter? The Rosicrucians and other secret societies of the 17th century used watermarks as mediums for the conveyance of cryptographic references, and books presumably containing Baconian ciphers are usually printed upon paper bearing Rosicrucian or Masonic watermarks. Often there are several symbols in one book, such as the Rose Cross, urns, bunches of grapes, and others. At hand is a document which may prove a remarkable key to a cipher beginning in the tragedy of Cymbeline. So far as known, it has never been published and is applicable only to the 1623 folio of the Shakespearean plays. The cipher is a line-end word count involving punctuation, especially the long and short exclamation points and the straight and slanting interrogation points. This code was discovered by Henry William Bearse in 1900, and after it has been thoroughly checked, its exact nature will be made public. No reasonable doubt remains that the Masonic order is the direct outgrowth of the secret societies of the Middle Ages, nor can it be denied that Freemasonry is permeated by the symbolism and mysticism of the ancient and medieval worlds. Sir Francis Bacon knew the true secret of Masonic origin, and there is reason to suspect that he concealed this knowledge in cipher and cryptogram. Bacon is not to be regarded solely as a man, but rather as the focal point between an invisible institution and a world, which was never able to distinguish between the messenger and the message which he promulgated. This secret society, having rediscovered the lost wisdom of the ages, and fearing that the knowledge might be lost again, perpetuated it in two ways. By an organization, Freemasonry, to the initiates of which it revealed its wisdom in the form of symbols. By embodying its arcana in the literature of the day, by means of cunningly contrived ciphers and enigmas. Evidence points to the existence of a group of wise and illustrious fraters who assumed the responsibility of publishing and preserving for future generations the choicest of the secret books of the ancients, together with certain other documents which they themselves had prepared. That future members of their fraternity might not only identify these volumes, but also immediately note the significant passages, words, chapters, or sections therein, they created a symbolic alphabet of hieroglyphic designs. By means of a certain key and order, the discerning few were thus enabled to find that wisdom by which a man is raised to an illumined life. The tremendous import of the Baconian mystery is daily becoming more apparent. Sir Francis Bacon was a link in that great chain of minds which has perpetuated the secret doctrine of antiquity from its beginning. This secret doctrine is concealed in his cryptic writings. The search for this divine wisdom is the only legitimate motive for the effort to decode his cryptograms. Masonic research might discover much of value if it would turn its attention to certain volumes published during the 16th and 17th centuries, which bear the stamp and signet of that secret society, whose members first established modern Freemasonry, but themselves remained as an intangible group, controlling and directing the activities of the outer body. The unknown history and lost rituals of Freemasonry may be rediscovered in the symbolism and cryptograms of the Middle Ages. Freemasonry is the bright and glorious son of a mysterious and hidden father. It cannot trace its parentage because that origin is obscured by the veil of the superphysical and the mystical. The Great Folio of 1623 is a veritable treasure house of Masonic lore and symbolism, and the time is at hand when that great work should be accorded the consideration which is its due. Though Christianity shattered the material organization of the pagan mysteries, it could not destroy the knowledge of supernatural power which the pagans possessed. Therefore, it is known that the mysteries of Greece and Egypt were secretly perpetuated through the early centuries of the Church, and later, by being clothed in the symbolism of Christianity, were accepted as elements of that faith. Sir Francis Bacon was one of those who had been entrusted with the perpetuation and dissemination of the arcana of the superphysical originally in the possession of the pagan hierophants, and to attain that end either formulated the Fraternity of RC or was admitted into an organization already existing under that name and became one of its principal representatives. For some reason not apparent to the uninitiated, there has been a continued and consistent effort to prevent the unraveling of the Baconian skein. Whatever the power may be which continually blocks the efforts of investigators, it is as unremitting now as it was immediately following Bacon's death, and those attempting to solve the enigma still feel the weight of its resentment. A misunderstanding world has ever persecuted those who understood the secret workings of nature, seeking in every conceivable manner to exterminate the custodians of this divine wisdom. Sir Francis Bacon's political prestige was finally undermined, and Sir Walter Raleigh met a shameful fate because their transcendental knowledge was considered dangerous. The forging of Shakespeare's handwriting, the foisting of fraudulent portraits and death masks upon a gullible public, the fabrication of spurious biographies, the mutilation of books and documents, the destruction or rendering illegible of tablets and inscriptions containing cryptographic messages have all compounded the difficulties attendant upon the solution of the Bacon-Shakespeare-Rosicrucian riddle. The Ireland forgeries deceived experts for years. According to material available, the Supreme Council of the Fraternity of RC was composed of a certain number of individuals who had died what is known as the philosophically death. When the time came for an initiate to enter upon his labors for the order, he conveniently died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. In reality, he changed his name and place of residence, and a box of rocks or a body secured for the purpose was buried in his stead. It is believed that this happened in the case of Sir Francis Bacon, who, like all servants of the mysteries, renounced all personal credit and permitted others to be considered as the authors of the documents which he wrote or inspired. The cryptic writings of Francis Bacon constitute one of the most powerful tangible elements in the mysteries of transcendentalism and symbolic philosophy. Apparently, many years must yet pass before an uncomprehending world will appreciate the transcending genius of that mysterious man who wrote the Novum Organum, who sailed his little ship far out into the unexplored sea of learning through the Pillars of Hercules, and whose ideals for a new civilization are magnificently expressed in the utopian dream of the New Atlantis. Was Sir Francis Bacon a second Prometheus? Did his great love for the people of the world and his pity for their ignorance cause him to bring the divine fire from heaven concealed within the contents of a printed page? In all probability, the keys to the Baconian riddle will be found in classical mythology. He who understands the secret of the seven-rayed god will comprehend the method employed by Bacon to accomplish his monumental labor. Aliases were assumed by him in accordance with the attributes and order of the members of the planetary system. One of the least known, but most important, keys to the Baconian enigma is the third, or 1637, edition, published in Paris, of Les Images aux Tableaux de Plate Peinture des du Philostrates, Sophistes Grecs et les Statues de Calistrate, by Blaise de Wegener. The title page of this volume, which, as the name of the author when properly deciphered indicates, was written by or under the direction of Bacon or his secret society, is one mass of important Masonic or Rosicrucian symbols. On page 486 appears a plate entitled Hercules Furia, showing a gigantic figure shaking a spear, the ground before him strewn with curious emblems. In his curious work, Des Bild des Speerschütlers die Lösung des Shakespeare-Rätsels, Alfred Freund attempts to explain the Baconian symbolism in the Philostrates. Bacon he reveals as the philosophical Hercules, whom time will establish as the true spear shaker, Shakespeare.